Hello world and welcome to Beam Stream. So today I kind of wanted to start off a little differently, a bit more informal in ways that, it's a bit more sociable. And for the most part, all of my previous videos have been mostly, semi-scripted. So I kind of wanted to do a different take. Um, when it comes to developer journeys in general, I think it's a missing part within, software development as an industry, right? We tend to kind of keep our journeys to ourselves, right? And from this point, I'm thinking I want to start off something new with my channel specifically. So I'm going to start off essentially a podcast series interviewing different developers about their journeys, about their problems, and um, all of the challenges they've faced to kind of get up to the point that they are at now, right? So to kind of kick that off, I kind of wanted to start off with my personal developer journey. Um, so I guess we'll start off from how I got into the industry at all. So actually, for myself, it's a very classic kind of no-brainer journey that I've been through, and it will probably relate to what others have as well. But this is what this series is going to be about. It's not having a discussion on such a linear, one path, developer journey story. And that's kind of what I want to highlight, despite me being quite classical. So to kind of kick things off, I studied computer science at university in a very classic fashion. And between the years two and between the second year and my last year of university, I got the opportunity to essentially become a developer for a year in industry. It's part of the university course. They kind of call it either placement year or sandwich course, right? It's where you work in an industry for a year. And the first job that I got professionally as a developer was in a care homes slash nursing home company. And there, the technology stack was Python, Django, and JavaScript. So I kind of managed to dabble, which was very challenging to start with, in two new languages where I had absolutely no confidence in programming at all. So I kind of had to build most things up from the ground up, um, which actually, by the looks of it, looking back, I have no idea how I managed to do that and not get overwhelmed. Um, but anyways, I digress. So after my final, well, actually, once again, during my last year of university, I got into a contracting position, kind of using the skills that I learned from my year in industry, while doing my last year of university. The So the technology stack there was also Python and Django. And at the time, they were using a very early version of Vue.js. So that was cool. Very kind of cutting edge at the time, which was cool. But then obviously that was only a contractual position, and I needed to find a full-time opportunity. Um, so while I was doing that, I was also kind of applying to other jobs. Um, and I did manage to find a job, all secured, luckily, even before I graduated, which was a relief to say the least, to be honest. Because you know how it can be with financial obligations, financial responsibility, and real life stuff, which I won't delve too deep into. Um, so, from that point after graduation, I managed to start in a financial services company, um, where it's anything and everything about, classic stock trading and so on. So this was kind of my entry into financial services, which for the most part I've been part of now for quite a while, around 5 to 6 years now. So the opportunity that I found there was a graduate scheme, and the graduate scheme allowed me to essentially rotate between other teams. The company itself was quite big, so different teams would kind of feel like being onboarded to a new company every time, which was cool, but it also showed a lot of perspective into how, large the organization actually was. Um, so for the most part, I was actually a primarily a front-end developer. So this is where I got into front end quite quite deep into it. I honestly don't know how I kept up. Maybe because I was a lot younger then and I was always on the lookout for the latest technology, latest practices on the front end, as we all know, evolves every week, right? Um, but yeah, like for around a year, both of my rotations was about front end development. I learned JavaScript and I learned TypeScript, which was cool. So I kind of wanted to have a different spin on my last year, or rather my last rotation. And there I kind of learned Java. So uh, so yeah, it was two front end rotations plus one back end rotation, which was done in Java. And then I asked myself, do I see myself using Java for the next X or so years? The answer was heading more towards a no because I was more keen on the technology rather than the company. Um, and this is where it kind of prodded me to kind of find a new opportunity at another company. And so I did. I managed to find another company, and the role there was a purely back-end role, and they were using Node.js and TypeScript, where they use AWS with Terraform, and we used AWS Lambdas. So it was very much a very different, well, I mean, it was a very different paradigm entirely from the organization that I was part of because the old organization was mainly a Java house where they had some front end teams, but with this one, it was a pure AWS stack for backend and it was pure AWS development. So you can imagine how much stuff was new to me at the time. But it was cool. I got to learn quite a lot more. And at this point, it kind of sparked, this whole trait that I think I have, which is just extreme curiosity. You know, I feel like as a developer, I'm quite curious about many different things, and so this curiosity essentially um, allowed me to dabble across other programming languages and other cutting edge kind of technologies that are coming out, every week or so and stuff like that. Like, I mean, quite recently we had a release for bun.js, which was an impressive early release of basically leveraging VLang and it's being used, I believe, as a JS runtime. And that showed very impressive results even against Dino, which is implemented in Rust. So you can imagine my curiosity when I, see all of these new amazing pieces of technology coming out and just me having to try it out because, this is really cool. Um, and on the notion of programming languages, I'm very curious about them. During my university, I learned Haskell, which many would dread at, but I was like, this is really solid as a language. The performance is questionable, but as a language, it was a really interesting take on a pure functional programming language, right? So at this point, after working in my year of industry, I learned JavaScript, Python, and then in my last year, Haskell. And then I got into, learning Rust, and then I, dabbled in Scala, Kotlin as well, all the JVM languages, I guess. And I guess I continue to delve into other, languages pretty much. Um, so yeah, at that point, I was doing a purely back-end role and so on. And then finally, oddly enough, I recently went back to my old company. So this was the company that hired me initially as a grad. Um, so yeah, I went in there and now I am a full stack developer for that company. So I'm doing pretty much bits of everything, I guess, front end, back end, as well as infrastructure on AWS using Terraform. So at this point, that's my current role, and yeah, I've been on the grind, as people say, for about 5 or 6 years. Um, which kind of brings me to an interesting point of burning bridges or not, right? I have taken the notion to never burn a bridge, to leave in a very positive manner, however challenging it can be. But having said that, I still feel like I am very inexperienced, even though I have 5 to 6 years under my belt. I am still kind of finding my footing by kind of understanding the socials between, progression slash, people in general during a work environment and so on, even though 5 to 6 years is considered experience in our industry, I would kind of beg differ to myself just because of the challenges may be quite different to what other developers have, right? Which brings it on to kind of the next point that I want to make that, we have a lot of developers in our industry who have gone through very, very different um, industries, right? Some have, or quite a few now actually, have switched careers halfway to get into programming. And because of that, I'm really curious to know how their journeys are like, what challenges they've had to face as a result of this switch, and it makes me interested to kind of find this out from them. And so this is what this series is going to be about. Um, so I've already talked about myself. This was my journey into development. It's quite boring, really. Um, but others definitely have a more interesting journey than myself. So if you like what you've listened to, please let me know, and I shall see you soon, hopefully. And yeah, stay tuned.